Okay, I originally wanted to do this and have my son come in because he does have ADHD. He was diagnosed at the age of 4 with ADHD severe, which, in hindsight, I mean, in my professional opinion, a 4-year-old can be rather hyper. And so, yeah, I saw the diagnosis. I read the diagnosis. I didn't disagree with the diagnosis. But at the same time, I only had one child. I had nothing to compare it to. And so I was like, well, I have a little monkey. When I was a kid, we called it ants in the pants, or distracted, or as they got older, obnoxious and things like that. So and again, if I've got a touch of the distractibilities myself, I don't see ADHD as a bad thing. I know some people with ADHD are extremely successful, extremely can be focused, can be very creative, as in our featured person here, Adam Levine. I mean, fantastic songwriter, but I have seen him, and I think it might be one of these links here. If you go ahead and click through, those are also in the module. The Own It campaign, he got a little bit of kickback on that one because he was using his celebrity status to say, hey, take meds. And not everybody, meds is not always a journey for everybody. And then the second link is from BuzzFeed, what ADHD feels like. And I think it's great because you have some adults talking about it. And they pick different types of adults, right? So different genders and things like that, different ethnicities, and ones who took meds and liked it, ones who didn't take meds and liked it, ones who took meds and hated it, and ones who didn't take meds and hated it. And then you see this journey, and I really think it's great. So again, plenty of people can be very, very functional with ADHD, and we'll talk about the different types and whatnot. And at this point in the semester, we're past the halfway point. So you guys are getting used to the book and knowing the format that it comes in and things like that. So just starting off, I just wanted to give like a little cultural sound out that, ADHD can be a handful, but it also can be very super fun. So it just kind of depends. I mean, somebody has to be in a very rigid career would not be great. So like, here's an example that just popped in my head. And this is a very white reference. So if you've seen the movie Sound of Music, at the beginning, Maria was very young. She was trying to be a nun, and she just didn't fit in. And she was always like escaping out into the woods and whatnot. So things like that, people who are expected to live a very rigid life and can't quite fit in, that would be a challenge for them. But somebody who maybe wants to work with little kids and likes all their exuberance and their tendency to switch topics, that might be a great place for someone to work who does have ADHD. An artist who doesn't have to worry about money and producing a lot of pieces and just can like putter around their workshop or their studio all the time and then produce things here and there, then that's fantastic. But again, there's ways that, again, with every disorder that we've talked about so far, and even the ones towards the end of the chapter, end of the book, there's ways that we cope, that we adapt. We use different tools, and some people have a mild form of this, it showed up recently, or it's their whole life. Some of the statistics have changed in all of our chapters here. I think our book is from 2017, so not too old. I'm recording this in 2021, so not too old, but enough to where the statistics change a lot. And there's a push right now for adult onset ADHD. I can tell you, I do talk to my physician about it, and she's like, well, you're older, so we don't really, we try to attribute all your symptoms to other things like hormonal imbalances and whatnot, and stress and things like that. I'm like, okay, except for I can give you symptoms from lifelong. So again, I don't have to have a diagnosis to know that I very much can hang with people with ADHD. I speak it. My friends call it. You might not have it, but you speak it, or you might have it because you got a mild case of it and you speak. It's like a language, it's being able to jump onto the tangent that they're jumping onto and then looping it back. That's kind of my skill. And so that's why I'm always like, yeah, maybe I don't have it, because I can say, we were talking about this. Let's come back to that. So that's not always the case with people with ADHD. But again, everybody's different. Nobody's the same, right? If you have 5 kids in your classroom who have ADHD, they're all going to look exactly the same, especially the presentations between the types of ADHD and then even genders, right? I know a lot of the people I know are females who have ADHD, and we're very chatty, but women are very chatty and girls are very chatty to begin with. And so, yeah, looking back, we probably would have gotten identified if, let's say, the comments my 7th grade teacher made to me and my friends when I was in the 7th grade now, yeah, I probably would have been diagnosed with ADHD for sure. But again, back in the day, a million years ago, we called it distracted or obnoxious or non-compliant or unruly or argumentative or things like dumb, distracted, not really smart, like whatever, those sorts of things. So let's, as we move forward, let's keep in mind person first language, and that there are good and there's upsides and downsides and goods and bads to every single chapter that we've talked about so far. And hey, Adam Levine's done some good work. He did in a recent interview say, like, my ideas will come in and out of my head, and there's hundreds of songs I couldn't capture. There's so many songs that went by that I didn't capture. He's done pretty well, you know. And I'm always curious now that these guys, they start to mellow out when they have kids, and so he has kids now. And so I always wonder, is like, oh, do you see yourself in your kids and things like that? And ADHD, it's not that there's a genetic marker, but it does have a lot of family patterning and traits and things like that. So it's kind of fun. So part one, we describe it, we define it as typically. And what are we going to learn in this section, which is basically what it is, what it looks like, and then prevalence and placement. The definition, you're going to see, again, we have this diagnostic statistical manual, DSM-5. When I was in school, it was the 3. But this is kind of like a book that has every sort of disorder in it. And ADHD is really talking about, the DSM really talks about when it occurs, where it occurs, and the different settings and how long it's been occurring. Again, if somebody, let's say, was 35 and all of a sudden started being extremely distractible and was getting fired from jobs and losing relationships and couldn't pay a bill and blah, 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 it could be other things. You know, I don't know what those other things could be other than like stress, trauma, different hormones in our lifetime. It could be a brain tumor. There's a bunch of different things. Sometimes people present a certain way and they are on a substance. So again, we're talking mostly about children that are not on substances and whatnot. It's more of a brain function. And so let's look at the definitions here. Again, the DSM-5 has a set of definitions, but there are agencies who are so a little bit more plugged in, like we've seen in the past. So again, when you see these equal marks, that's usually like, that's a definition of the book, so you should know it. I don't want to read it at you. I want you guys to extract that. And as a good rule of practice, write down what it says in the book and like define it on your own, because I will ask you at some time, like, how would you describe it, right? And now here's the thing, keep in mind, if you go back to IDEA, there's only 13 categories, but there is no category for ADHD. We have a category for autism. We have a category for intellectual disability. We have a category for speech and language. We have a category for, again, LD, physical disorders. Let's see, what else? Low vision, blindness. We'll talk about that later. We have emotional and disturbance as a category, but ADHD does not have its own category. It's listed under OHI, other health impairments. It's kind of a catch-all. I believe that ADHD will carve out its own category, because like autism showed up and it was new, and then it was rapidly growing so quick it became its own column, and it kind of like leapfrogged over ADHD. But I think in the future it will. We're seeing a lot more kids, especially now because of the pandemic and loss of social interactions and loss of typically developmental experiences are being missed or were missed in classroom settings when kids were home and trying to do school. They're not around their peers, and so we don't exactly know what this longitudinal these deficits of other, not being around people, are what it's going to look like in the brain. So we're seeing a lot more kids who are hyper, who may qualify for ADHD. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's what that is, but we might see this category expanding. We might see all the categories expanding in some respect because of the changes in our society. But just keep your ear to the ground and be flexible. Remember, we don't diagnose. We're just trying to support the child in that moment. If you know this child cannot sit still, you can't get upset with them send a letter home and mark them, poor graded because they can't sit still. That's like saying, oh, I'm sorry, you're a person in a wheelchair because you have 2 amputations at the knee, but you can't walk. So why not? You can't tell a person with double amputees to run a marathon unless they have their prosthetics and they have learned how to run. Right. So why do we get upset or, get irritated or get short or frustrated with somebody who has something like this as a deficit? This is what their deficit is. I can tell you as a parent, not as a professor, but as a parent, I would get these texts home. I call them tattletale texts from professionals. Now, my son doesn't have a phone. He's 14, still doesn't have a phone, but all the professionals, the teachers, the aides, or even the principal, I would get these texts and they'd be like, well, he can't sit still. I would say that is a distinct, part of the definition of ADHD. You were in the IEP with me, right? He's categorized number 1 under OHI because even though he has autism, the ADHD was the bigger problem, right? So you can have both of them. It really doesn't matter which one's first, but they just kind of identify where the bigger challenges are, where the more support is. And since then, he's had ASD show up first and then ADHD second, or OHI second. We've also tagged on EBD, emotional behavior disturbance too, which chaps me as a parent, but as a professional, I'm like, well, that just gives more support. He gets to see a therapist extra, right? So I just shut up as a parent and let the professor take over. So anyways, I get these tattletale texts that say, oh, well, he can't sit still and he's blurting out and he's fidgety and you just described categorically what ADHD is. Do I need to remind you what the DSM says or what you signed on the IEP? Why are you telling me the sky is blue 37 times today? This is what the child has. This is the version of this child. This is what this child is going to present with every single day. Do you think ADHD takes a day off? It does not. It does not. It might look more bigger or pronounced or more evident on a certain day and a little bit less, right? But I'm telling you, I get these tattletale texts. In fact, he's 14. We've gone through all these different schools, and about once a month I still get him. And now he's in a private school, highly trained people, one-on-one aid, people who are so highly trained and very kind, and we really appreciate them. But they'll be like, he was this and he was that and la la la, and I'm like, and then so because of that, we took away X, Y, and Z until the spring semester. He had a bad day, so you're telling me that you took whatever reinforcer away for 4 months? That's going to backfire on you. So let's look at this reinforcement schedule again, shall we? So yeah, I get the emails of mom, and then I answered as a professor, and then their answers are, we will consider your suggestions. Yeah. It's okay for everybody to have a bad day. Yesterday I had a bad day and he was like aggressive, and he does this thing, if you don't let me go to the bathroom when I say I want to go, and it's the aide's job to say like, hey, let's just do like 3 more questions on the worksheet, or let's do 5 more things, and then you can go to the bathroom during passing period. It's just executive functioning. We'll talk about that. That's what an aide helps with this organization. And, and so they called me because he was having a bad day. His mom, I'm having a bad day. I feel like I said, first thing I said was, did you take your meds? And you know what? Again, we'll talk about medication as a journey, but he said, yeah, I took them. So really aggressive and stuff like that. And then the next day rolls around. He's like, I kind of didn't take them yesterday because we have them in the little organizer. So I said, listen, you had a bad day. You kind of like, you had these goals that you were setting for behavior, and now you have to start over. Was it worth it? He's like, no. I'm like, okay. So again, we have to let them learn themselves. Again, even someone who has ADHD at a certain age, they grow and they change, and then the aging process, it kicks in and things like that. So we do, even when you have a diagnosis or a categorization, your body changes. Telling you, when hormones kick in, it's a whole nother thing too. So again, keep in mind that, ADHD is a thing, and it can be a handful, but it morphs and changes, and it's really something that we can handle. Always in the back of your mind say, even if you're like kind of freaked out right now, like, I don't know what to do with this kid's super sensory, or he's rolling around, or he's argumentative, or he's kicking over a chair, or sometimes they lose their ability to communicate effectively, right? Just tell yourself, hey, I'm an adult. I've been on the planet longer. Even if I don't know what to do in this exact moment, just be present with them and coach yourself to be like, it's okay. You know, it's okay. Just support the child. Just be here with the child. And then sometimes you can, you know, with your training, you pull your bag of tricks that might help the child to calm down or redirect or have different behaviors that are more functional at the moment. So the definition doesn't tell you a whole picture of the person, but hopefully as you learn from the book, but also start working with kids, you learn professionally what a kid can look like on a certain day or having a good day. Every single person on the planet is entitled to a bad day. You and me, everybody. I don't care who it is, the Pope, Obama, the president, like your grandma, everybody can have a bad day, but we can't, you know, do something that's gonna set everything back just because they had a bad day. Like, so ADHD with a bad day, it can be a pretty bad day, but we're the adults, we're the leaders, we can do this. So again, these are the definitions. It's categorized under OHI, and this is where we start to break it down. So the book does talk about 3 different types, subsets. So we have the hyperactivity. This is the one, the kid who's like super fidgety, can't sit still, can't sit, like can't focus. So right here, it says right here, 3 to 5% of all American children. So that number is a little bit bigger now. Let's add 1 to each. Let's say 4 to 6. Okay, not quite 10%, but getting up there. And we'll talk about there's different regions where there's more ADHD, and we'll talk about why. It says right here, look at failure to listen to instructions, inability to organize oneself or schoolwork, fidgeting with hands and feet, talking too much, leaving projects, chores and homework unfinished, and having trouble paying attention to and responding to details. Yeah, it sounds like a teenager, right? But when you have this at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, like it's a lot, right? I have to, trust me, I'm not super thrilled that I have a teenager with ADHD with a room looks just like, I want to get in there and clean it. I want to get in there, throw everything out. That's not going to help. That's not going to keep our relationship. That's not going to make him want to learn how to organize. He has parts of his brain that are unable. He has unlearned skills. Skills can be learned, but sometimes they take not like a month or like 6 weeks. They take like 6 years or like 10 years. Yeah, right. Or sometimes never. Right. And so he is different than I am. That's not how I would have my room. I was like opposite. I was way weirdly compulsive, which was a whole nother conversation. Right. But check this out. There's these subtypes. Predominantly inattentive subtype. One of my godsons, he was always kind of like open mouth and like kind of like off somewhere else. He was kind of like, and I was like, dude, what's going on in there? Like he was about 12 maybe. Dude, what's going on in there? He's like, I'm watching Star Wars. Okay, not a dumb person who's watching a full movie in their head. That's not dumb. He's in the Navy now, doing really well. School, not his strong suit. Yeah. Predominantly hyperactive and impulsive subtype. This is my kid. This is my kid who has learned when the teacher says, okay, what season are we in, kids? You know, like my backdrop here. What season are we in, kids? He has learned he has to raise his hand to get called on. We started working on that goal in kindergarten. He sort of nailed it in the 7th grade. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, about 7 years. Okay. But now he raises his hand and blurts out the answer. He's like, but I raised my hand. I followed the rules. Yes, you did. But now you have to be content to hold on to that. So we've set up some other behaviors. So when he's impulsive and he wants to yell it out, he just doesn't have brakes. We call it Ferrari engine, bicycle brakes. Yeah. And there's some of the speakers in the module who talk about that. Some of the links in there, I put that. So he is a hyperactive impulsive subtype. He will literally talk to you about anything, like but very tangential. Like, how was your schoolwork today? It was great. I saw a squirrel on the way home. Okay, cool. But really, how did it go in your 2nd period math class? It was fine. But the squirrel, it was like gonna run out under this bus, and like they just we say his squirrels have squirrels because he can go down, he can like change topics and then change topic in the middle of changing topics. And he literally I have caught him saying squirrel, squirrel, like So there's this weird thing where, again, I have to, as an adult, as a leader in his world, have to say, okay, now let's get back to the topic. All right, what is your homework for this weekend? I don't have any. Oh, well, that's pretty much a canned answer for a teenager. And I go, okay, well, maybe your answer is going to change in a little bit when I check the homework assignment on the portal. He's like, okay, I have this, this, and that. I'm like, okay. I can't get mad at him for like lying about it. That's what teenagers kind of do. Not all teenagers lie, but there's this thing like, I'm going to pick my battles, right? So hyperactive, impulsive. Literally, when he came from school today, he's like, I'm going to go ride my bike. And then comes back, I'm going to ride my scooter. Oh, wait a minute. I fell. No, I think I'm going to ride this. No, I'm going to do that. It's like, okay, come in, let's have a snack. Let's talk about the day, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then you can go ride his bike. And then what he did, he went out to ride his bike. He went past the boundaries that we had agreed upon, and he didn't have a helmet on, and he crashed. So now he's like super mopey and whiny, and I broke both my wrists, except for he's on his switch like this, so there's this thing where we have to kind of pick our battles, because we know you've taken this class, but then you're going to have experience with kids. Even if you're in a gen ed environment, you're going to have experience with kids like this, or maybe it's you, or maybe it's a kid in your bubble or in your family or in your neighborhood or whatnot, or in the church group you volunteer in. And then there's a combined subtype. I would like to say he was inattentive sometimes. Sometimes he is inattentive. He also has auditory processing disorder. So sometimes he's super busy inside, and so he hears stuff, but he doesn't really hear it. So there's this weird things like, is it this? Is it that? Is it this? So as a parent, as an adult, as a leader, you can't get mad at them for just being themselves. You have to be like, I'll say something. I'm like, okay, so when is that report due? Silence, which is a teenage response, right? Half if I ignore her, maybe she'll go away, right? And I go, hello. And he goes, huh? Teenager response, no problem. But he's been doing the huh thing since he was 7, more auditory processing. And I go, okay, take a deep breath. And what are the words that I just said? He heard it. He was attending. He just was attending to 17 other things at the same time. And he goes, oh, the project, I think it's due Tuesday. Really, that's like kind of an odd day for a project to be due. Let's double check your binder. Oh, I left my binder at home. I mean, at school. Oh, really? I saw you walk in with it. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah. So it's like teenager plus. That's what I say. Or like 3 teenagers like duct tape together for funsies, right? ADHD is usually diagnosed in childhood, although the condition can continue into the adult years, right? And again, a lot of times girls do get missed because we tend to learn how to mask or fit in, or just learn how to shut up or talk to our friends when the teacher's not looking, and whatever, did all the business, or we journal. We have all this energy and we put it places like stickers and whatnot, because I still have stickers on my desk. Yeah, for my journal as a grown person. Yeah. Right. So then here's this deficit hyperactivity disorder. So then they break down hyperactivity into inattention and hyperactivity and impulsivity. So again, this is NIH, and then this is the APA, the DSM. So again, this is neither here nor there. You are not diagnosing. We can categorize a child based on a diagnosis that the doctor gives, that the parents allow the school to see. I could have disallowed his doctor's assessment into the IEP. I could have said, no, he doesn't have that. And they're gonna say, well, what did the doctor say? Well, I'm not willing to share that with you. You're gonna run into parents. You're just like, nope, I'm not gonna share that with you. He's fine. It could be in denial, or it could be like, truly, I don't want you to know. Because you might treat him poorly, or you might treat him worse. Trust, there's, you're gonna run into a lot of different things. Just know that this is where you get to talk to the parents and, convince it. And like, we're not here about a diagnosis. Doesn't tell me how to teach your son. It doesn't matter, or daughter. It doesn't matter if we're doing fractions and your child is neurotypical or neurodiverse. It doesn't matter. We're doing the fractions. A lot of kids hate fractions. It's fine. I just know that maybe your child needs extra breaks, or mine needed sensory tape on his laptop so he can like tickle it. Mine needed a rubber band around the bottom of his chair so he could kick it. Mine actually would do flashcards as he was walking the backstops. Yeah. So there's a lot of different, as I'm moving my chair, there's a lot of different things to consider as you're working with kids like this. The bottom line is that their needs are more important than a diagnosis or a category. Okay, good. Keep that in mind. And again, at any point, if you guys have any questions, email me, put it in Canvas inbox. If you're watching this and you want to hold on to my email for future semesters, it is Laney_Marianne at SC College. That's Laney, LANEY _ like the little line, not a dash, like the underline. Marianne, it's one word, MARIANNE, at Santiago Canyon College, so sccollege.edu. So keep that in mind. I have students semesters ago, schools ago, like emailing me, which is great. I love it. I love to hear how you guys are doing. And if you have questions like this, let me know. Every once in a while I get one. I was like, I just had a baby and 4 years ago, and now that he's 4, he's just like, okay, yeah, let's talk. Again, here, this is what the DSM, this is what I was saying earlier, that we have symptoms. We're looking for greater or equal to 6 symptoms of inattention. If a child is just inattentive in a few ways, they don't qualify. They're just inattentive. They're just not enough inattentive. So again, J or Jai is easily distracted, makes careless errors. This might be you, might be me. Has trouble concentrating, is very disorganized. Again, you'll see kids very messy desks. Usually has incomplete homework, avoids activities required prolonged effort. This is my son. Like, this, at 13 now, then you have teenagerness in there too. This is have persisted for 6 or more months. It said that in the book, it says that he had started acting like this when he was about 8. So for 5 years, that's more than 6 months, right? But again, mine got diagnosed at 4. So by the age of 3, he was showing all of these things, right? Not homework, but if it was something even like building something like Legos that he even liked, like Duplo stuff anything that he'd like to do, even running around, he couldn't do sustained effort, right? So again, here's the 6, right? Present before the age of 12, yes. Be present in 2 or more settings. So here's the thing. If they're only hyper at school because they go to a very conservative or rigid school, or maybe even a parochial school, and they're just hyper at school, but they're fine at home, that's not an issue. It's the environment. There's something there that's making them twitchy, yeah? Be severe enough to affect social, academic, or occupational performance. Means basically work. Like, will this person be able to hold a job down? Will this child be able to eventually hold a job down? It's going to be hard. Yeah, I always say, like, if puppies or vehicles, like if like puppies or like muscle cars could have like an attorney, my son would be perfect for that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, he's like dogs and cars and dogs and cars and dogs and cars and dogs, and he's always sticking up for the underdog, and he's super disorganized. But if he had like a secretary, he'd be a fantastic guy, right? Not to be caused by other disorders. Again, there could be nervous system issues. There could be brain issues. Again, there could be trauma. Trauma could look like this: distraction, errors, concentrating, disorganization, incomplete homework. This could be, again, peer pressure. Could be drug use. It could be domestic violence. There could be all kinds of different things that a child could present this way. But let's say it was domestic violence and something happened maybe like a week ago. They wouldn't qualify because it says, even though they have all 6 symptoms, it hasn't persisted for 6 or more months. See the difference? And since this child is 13, if it just showed up at 13, again, 12 would have discluded him as well. So again, this is what the doctors do. This is what the doctors figure out. This is not for us to do, but it's good for us to know, because a lot of times we use ADHD as like a casual term. Oh my God, I was so distracted today. I totally have ADHD. Don't do that, because you know what you're doing is you're telling somebody else's who's struggling with the symptoms that it's kind of like lighthearted to be like that way today for you, like 1 day out of the year, or maybe 10 days out of the year. This person is literally struggling to remember to pay bills. Yeah. So don't be like that. Oh, I'm so ADHD today. Like, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. Yeah. I'm telling you, I had a friend who was diagnosed in her 40s, and she cried. And I was like, listen, you know you are, right? And you know your dad is, right? And if you open your nightstand and next to you, it's full of full-size candy, like hers is like the Red Hots or the Warheads or whatever, like the little red hot tamales or whatever. My only friend I ever had, I met her in college, and she had a candy dish in her own bathroom. I was like, a lot of times sugar they're trying to balance out their dopamine with sugar. And so she's like, I cried. I was like, literally your first grade teacher who hangs with the kids during lunch and recess. It's hilarious. You might see it a mile away on stuff, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Diagnosis doesn't matter. Again, okay, so again, we'll talk with, there's types obviously here. And kids can have more than one type. It really kind of depends. I'll move this guy over right to the middle. And again, the book talks about these definitions and things like that. So again, just know that we are not going to like seriously nickel and dime you about like, oh, what is the diagnostic criteria for it? No, because we're not diagnosing, right? But again, the difference you're going to see here. And again, there's videos in the module of the ones who are kind of like checked out and daydreamy. Those are mostly girls. Right. And so a lot of times, but then girls will kind of catch up because they ask their friends and they're very linguistic and so they catch up. And so think about it in your classroom. Let's say you're already in a classroom or you're helping out in a classroom or you're volunteering in a classroom or whatever, or even if you remember your own classroom, the squeaky wheel gets a grease, right? The kid in the corner who's knocking over chairs and starting fights and totally like doing spit wads and throwing pencils and mouthing off and not paying attention. That's the one who's going to get diagnosed and identified. The girl who's like staring out the window and just keeping up and getting a C in the class is going to get missed until we see that achievement gap really show up. And then usually that's when we go, oh, there might be something there, right? The multi-tiered systems of support, when we notice that she's not catching along and we try to get those extra supports in and then the gap shows up, we're like, oh, maybe she has the inattentive presentation. You will get students who have both, but most of the time they're going to be one or the other. But again, you can have a combined presentation. They're fascinating. Sometimes their brain is going a mile a minute, their mouth is going a mile a minute, and then they're just totally checked out. And it's not that they're checked out, they're actually checked in. There's a concept that's just going through their mind and they're just like, I get it. I get it. You know, if I were way more hyper or like I learned how to stop talking. I'm a middle child. So I learned the power of observation, of just shutting up and letting the other kids get in trouble. So yeah, I could easily have ADHD and I just learned how to manage. My older brother and older sister got in all kinds of trouble and I just learned, don't do what they're doing. Play the game, play it smarter. Yeah. Oh, this is my favorite part. Problems with executive functions. That sounds so fancy. It just talks about our organizational skills in our brain, right? But here's the deal. Even for you guys to carve out time to watch this video took you executive functioning. Oh, I had to work, I had to do this, I had to do that, and then I had to like, get the video going, right? So it's one of these things that we all need to learn about because we all use executive functioning. And sometimes even neurotypical people have executive functioning deficits because like, I'm telling you right now, you catch me on a Monday morning or Friday afternoon, I'm going to be a little checked out or checked in and not super organized. Like it's 3/4 in the way of the semester. My house is really kind of a mess right now. Oh, I simultaneously have Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas decorations in boxes all over the house right now. Like, yeah, not a great place to be, but we have a day off tomorrow, so guess what I'm doing. But just for me to say I'm planning to doing that, whether or not I actually get it done, that's a whole nother conversation. But even having the conversation of doing it, of saying I'm going to do it versus how much I'm actually going to do, I don't know, because I'm not always super organized. And we'll talk about that in a sec. Kids with ADHD also may exhibit strengths. Yes. Listen, if I could bottle whatever Energizer Bunny thing that is powering my child, if I could put it in a lotion bottle or an energy drink, I'd be a gazillionaire. My kid never slows down. He even sleeps really actively. He talks in his sleep. He moves around in his sleep. He has full conversations and it's like his brain is going a bazillion miles an hour and he just keeps going. It's seriously Energizer Bunny. David Nealman. If I could take a magic pill to get rid of ADHD, I wouldn't. I have a couple friends who are artists who have ADHD, and it's pretty fascinating to watch. I call it human pinball. Bing, 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 bing. I just like sit back. The other friend I told you about who's a teacher who's ADHD, I love being with her. As much as I talk and as fast as I talk, When I find when I'm with her, I don't have to talk a whole lot. And she likes to drive. So when we go out, she drives and talks, and I just, yeah, it's cool. It's like, wow, it's fantastic. I mean, there's always somebody whose brain is just going a bazillion. It's just fascinating to me. A lot of people with ADHD is fine. Again, there's functional parts and there's non-functional parts, but there's ways to get around it. Side note, TikTok has a lot of people sharing their symptoms and sharing tips and tricks. So I don't typically have TikTok on my phone during the school semester for obvious reasons. When you say I'm going to look at TikTok for 5 minutes, it's like an hour later and you're like, kill, right? So so I just remember seeing a few things that we still, and I show them to Peyton. Well, in the discussion where we're you'll see the young girl that I have in there, Jessica McCabe, I believe. She's like an expert, and there's all kinds of cool stuff. So there's a lot of help out there, and there's a lot of people being a lot more open with their symptoms, and then tips and tricks, like how to journal, how to keep things in, like how to post it this, how to put a timer, how to remind yourself, how to blah, 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 a bunch of things. The thing that I pulled out of TikTok maybe a few months ago was don't put it down, put it away. Don't put it down, put it away. So do you want 2 steps or 1? And for me, when I put it down, it doesn't turn into, that's not the second step. It's going to be 17 more steps before it gets put away. And it's going to be piles. It's going to be months of piles. Like, oh yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you, I got to touch it. Oh. Interesting. Hola. Hi. Good. Empty. They're empty. They're fine. Yeah. You came in at perfect time. I think just like shut me out of it, but I'll start over. Thank you. No, it's fine. You're fine. I have a good one. What is happening? Oh, what is it? What are we doing here? Oh, we're still recording. Let's see if I can stop this. That's so weird. It's logged me out, but I'm still recording. Let me stop recording and then do a second.